Welcome back, STS Nation. Today, I am sitting down with Mike Rowe, who has served his entire career in one capacity or another. After spending 20 years in the Army and Army National Guard, Mike entered law enforcement, working for Ada County Sheriff's Office in Idaho. Somewhere along the way, Mike also managed to complete a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice from Boise State University. Upon his retirement from Ada County Sheriff's Office in 2019, Mike continues his work with Idaho Mountain Search and Rescue Unit, where he works as a volunteer search manager and professional tracker.
For Idaho News 6, I'm senior reporter Don Nelson. On Monday, we showed you the happy reunion of 4 hunters with their families after they got stuck in the rugged Owyhee County backcountry. It took a well-coordinated effort to bring them to safety.
We are one of the most tenured search and rescue organizations in the country.
Rob Shelton is a member of the all-volunteer Idaho Mountain Search and Rescue. And when they received a call on Sunday evening from the Owyhee County Sheriff's Office that a party of 4 did not return home on Saturday, they jumped into action. They arrived at a staging area south of Grandview around 9 p.m. and set off on their off-road tracked vehicle. Medical officer Scotty Perkins said conditions were anything but ideal.
Whiteout conditions, and shortly after that, as normally happens with uneven dirt roads, found an area where that particular road was actually not road. It was a deep gully that had been ice covered and filled with water and slush. And the right side of that tracked vehicle behind me immediately went through the snow you couldn't see. He went right into that vehicle and ended up getting stuck.
You opened this door, and this door will not open.
We could not open the door.
Losing valuable time, it was decided to start the search back up first thing Monday morning. Back in Boise, Search and Rescue Manager Rob Shelton contacted the Idaho Army National Guard to see if they could help from the air because of the conditions on the ground.
Walked them through a briefing of all the information, our mapping, the data points, and then we began doing conversions of all the coordinates of the areas and kind of the why. And they were phenomenal. And they said, let's do it. We're all on board. We agree with this. And then their crews started prepping the Blackhawk.
It wasn't long after that the crew in the Blackhawk found the 3 adults and young boy and brought them home safely. Why do you do it?
So me personally, I love this country in Idaho. I love our backcountry, and to help others in those situations who are trying to enjoy it is an honor, because there's always risk when there's reward.
And it is so important to remember before you head out into the backcountry, tell your family where you are going, what time you are expected back, and bring plenty of food and water and clothing. And to those waiting at home,
if you have a concern that something has occurred that's beyond the normal behavior for that person, call your local law enforcement agency and let them know.
Local support is crucial to the success of Idaho Mountain Search and Rescue because they are a nonprofit and they do not charge for rescues. Dennis Dillon surprised them 2 years ago with the tracked and wheeled off-road vehicle at a fundraiser. And they have a couple of other fundraisers planned throughout the year, including one at Pay It Brewery in Boise later this month. Check it out. Help out if you can. Reporting from Canyon County, I'm senior reporter Don Nelson, Idaho News 6.
February 2nd of this year, these 4 family members plus a friend, literally ranging in from age 8 to 80, loaded up in a Toyota Tacoma to go on a depredation elk hunt. So that this is outside the normal elk hunting season, but they had depredation tags basically through Idaho Fish and Game where they could hunt for an elk, and they went into the Owyhee Mountains area, which is a lot of high desert and deep ravines and so forth, and we had a general idea where they were going based on the wife telling us, but we really didn't know where they were going to be. They had no phone service. They didn't have any kind of messaging system such as a Garmin InReach or anything like that. So they had no communication with them whatsoever. I think they went out on a Saturday, and they were supposed to return Saturday night, and we got called Sunday night fairly late. So we were able to send some ground teams, mostly vehicle aided ground teams. Like we have a track UTV, as well as some, 4-wheel drive equipped vehicles. But it was so wet and muddy that they could barely get anywhere in the search area. And they were doing this all in the dark that Sunday night. The what we call the in-town coordinator, that's the person that's on call to take any call outs, had made contact with both the National Guard as well as the FBI CAS team, which we've used before. The FBI CAS team are some agents that are specially trained in taking cell phone information and able to develop hot spots or particular areas that should be checked out because based on what they do. And I honestly don't know everything that goes into that, but it's pretty scientific and they're really good at it. So they were able to develop some hot spots where their phone, where the subject's phone had been hitting off towers, and they basically put arcs on the map, and where these arcs seem to intersect are often really good areas to search. So that next day, the Idaho Army National Guard was able to put a helicopter up, and we had one of our SAR managers meet with them out at Gowan Field at their Air Operations Center and show him or them on the map what the areas that they were interested in. They had 4 particular areas, and so basically they put these all in their navigation of the helicopter, and they took off and flew to the first point, searched that area, didn't find our subjects there, went to the second point, and they were there. And I was watching this on live, because we had a GPS in the helicopter with them, and so I'm seeing the helicopter fly on the map. We use SARTopo as our mapping software, and I'm able to see their line driving to point 2, and I'm like, why are they there so long? And I get a hold of the SAR manager that's at Gowan Field, and I'm like, what's going on? Why they're stopping there? And he goes, yeah, they've located the vehicle. They're going to go check and see if everybody's okay. And sure enough, everybody was fine. They'd actually taken all the snow off their vehicle. It was a silver vehicle, so they'd put some kind of bright colored material on top of their vehicle to make them to be seen more. They never left their vehicle. They had food. They had plenty of clothing to stay warm in, and they were able to successfully take them via helicopter out of the area and back to Boise.
That's such an incredible outcome and team effort to find and rescue these people. So when I was looking into a bit of the background of this case, and how they went missing, people were commenting, why were they elk hunting at that time in that spot? But you answered it. There's tags that you can hunt out of season.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a draw, so that not everybody can go get a depredation tag. There's some kind of draw or lottery system to get that tag, and they obviously had it. And honestly, I haven't looked at the regulations as far as that area this time of year, but I'm sure they were on the up and up, and they were out there with their tag and their rifle trying to get an elk, and they just got stuck. The vehicle just got stuck in the snow and the mud, and they couldn't go anywhere. Oh, the funny part about this is they had an app on their phone called Onyx Hunt, which a lot of hunters use Onyx Hunt because it's a good mapping system, and it also shows public and private land, so that you're not going on someone's private land hunting. And the one thing that I did help out with on this, I got a request from the SAR manager to write or to fill out a form and send it to Onyx, to their legal department, saying that we had an emergency. We needed the data from the Onyx Hunt application that they've had with them. And they had managed to put in 4 different spots on their map that they sent us the coordinates to. Had we not had the cast team information, those would have been places we could have started with as far as searching.
So, as I mentioned in the intro there, I mean, you've served your entire life, and you've gone from the Army to law enforcement, and you've continued on into volunteer search and rescue. I mean, that's quite a career. What age were you when you started into the Army?
Well, kind of a non-typical start. So I originally wanted to go in the Army full-time right out of high school, but I got accepted into college. I didn't think my scores were going to be that great, but I got accepted into the University of Massachusetts. So my parents talked me into, instead of foregoing active duty right away, going into the Army Reserves. So a week after I graduated, I was at basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia. I enlisted in the infantry and was in the Army Reserves for almost 2 years, year and a half, before I went into active duty. I did my year at University of Massachusetts, realized that I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life yet, long term. And so I eventually went active duty in 1985.
And I have a photo here of you, and this is from Korea.
Yes. So my active duty career took me initially to Fort Benning, Georgia, where I spent a year and a half. And then I spent the rest of my 4 years at Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, part of the 25th Infantry Division. And our areas of focus were Korea, Japan, Thailand, basically all the Asian countries, if we were needed to defend them.
And how many deployments did you go on with the Army?
Active duty, I went on 3, not counting some small island. You know, we trained on a couple of the other islands, but Korea, Japan, and Thailand.
So from there, did you transition directly into the Army National Guard?
I left active duty and went into the Wyoming National Guard initially, because I ended up in Wyoming, staying with my parents for a year to go to Central Wyoming College, which is a little community college there. So I was in a field artillery unit for about a year, just over a year, before I transferred to Boise State. And then I ended up at a aviation attack helicopter. We were transitioning from UH-1 gunships to Apaches helicopters, and I was an intel analyst. So my job was to provide any enemy information to the unit commander as to who we'd be facing if we were in the real fight.
And on the intel side, that takes some years of training, does it not?
Yeah, definitely. I spent a whole summer down at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, going to the intel analyst course there. It was like 12 or 13 weeks.
You mentioned that you transferred to Boise State. What did you take at Boise State on the academic side?
I continued with criminal justice. I ended up with a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice, and the funny thing that brought me there was a person I had met through a National Guard exercise from Idaho while I was still in Wyoming, had mentioned that his sister was at Boise State studying criminal justice and said that they had a great program, and that's how I ended up here.
So I take it you went into law enforcement. You applied after you were finished your degree.
Yeah, as you know, about my semester ended in December, so I was already applying in the fall at various places, and it took me a while before I finally got hired by the sheriff's office.
You worked for them in several different capacities.
Mm-hmm.
But what was
Yes.
your overall experience like working with the sheriff's office?
Oh, it was great. Worked with a lot of good people. Being that the sheriff is an elected position, I think he has higher expectations of his deputies, where a city police department is more of an appointment, and so he could lose his job every 4 years or so. So I think we had a good work ethic. There was definitely some great people that I worked with my entire time I was there, and got to do a lot of things. The sheriff's office, because it operates a jail, so that my first 3 years at the sheriff's office was working in the jail, and from there I went to patrol, and then a lot of other opportunities came open. Like I served as narcotics unit supervisor and got to work with both state and federal agencies on drug investigations. I supervised school resource officers and property crimes detectives for a short while. And I'd do patrol work in between. I'd work as a patrol sergeant. And then my last 6 years, I worked in the community resource unit, which was kind of a hodgepodge of responsibilities there.
Yeah, and I have a few questions there, because there seems to be some neat activities that you performed while in some of these roles. In the community, the position of the community resource sergeant that you finished off with the last 6 years, you mentioned to me you did everything from crash reconstruction, marine patrol, foothills patrol on dirt bikes. So were you riding dirt bikes doing these foothills patrol?
I didn't, but I had a guy that worked for me that was an accomplished motorcyclist. He had actually was retired, but came back part-time, and he had probably one of the greatest jobs in the world, is just cruising the foothills on a dirt bike and just enforcing, regulations.
While you were with the Ada County Sheriff's Office, is that when you first started in on the search and rescue side?
Yeah, so that was kind of a weird beginning as well. As part of my position, a lot of times we'd be asked to go lead up searches for people, and Ada County doesn't have a ton of unincorporated wilderness type areas, but it does have quite a bit of desert, and it does have foothills that lead right up into the Boise Front Range. So we did have people that would go missing or get lost, or despondent people. And so my supervisor, my lieutenant at the time, asked me to start attending the meetings for Idaho Mountain Search and Rescue, just so they had a familiar face from the sheriff's office. And then I kind of understood their capabilities and knew some of their leaders there. And from there, I spent probably a year attending their meetings. And then I saw how professional these folks were. They're, all volunteer, 501c3. So they're basically self-funded, and they came from all walks of life, everything from doctors and attorneys to, blue collar worker type folks, college students to retired people. And I just thought that they were highly skilled, highly professional, and dedicated. And I said, well, I got the time here. I'm getting close to the end of my retirement with Ada County, so I ended up joining.
I mean, here's a photo of you back with you when you were with Ada County and you were contracted out to Eagle PD. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. I spent a few years working for the city of Eagle as part of the Ada County contract with them.
And during your time in law enforcement, and this kind of leads into the SAR side of it, you started your training as a professional tracker while still with law enforcement, right?
Correct. So I had started attending the meetings out at IMSARU, and they sent me an invite, actually sent it to my work address, to a tracking class up in McCall, Idaho, through the Joel Harden Professional Tracking Services. And I said, this is really interesting. I've always been interested in how they do this, although I had no idea of how they did it. You know, you've seen things on television about what tracking is, but had no idea what it really is. And so I asked my chain of command. They sent me, and so I went up there and I, justified it as a skill that I can certainly help at the sheriff's office with, alongside of ending up in search and rescue.
I'm fascinated by tracking, and actually, I was trying to work with Kathy to get out to Idaho in May to work with the tracker to get my first level of certification as a professional tracker, and then also possibly train the attendees while I was out there as well, and some of the geographic profiling stuff I do. So it is a goal of mine to do that. So what level are you at with the professional tracking?
I am a journeyman. I achieved journeyman last year. And so basically you start as a novice, which is basically no certification, but you're learning, and you get to a certain level, and you go through a board and you get observed in the field, and you become a basic tracker once you've achieved all of the training and knowledge that you need to have as a basic tracker. And a basic tracker is someone that can basically get started on footprints or on footprint evidence, and should be able to follow it its entirety, step by step. From an apprentice track, or from a basic tracker, you move up to apprentice tracker. Just requires more skills. You get involved with training people a lot more, and spent several years as an apprentice tracker, and then last year finally became a journeyman tracker.
And what do you find that tracking brings to the table as far as your abilities as a search and rescue operator?
If you're able to find either the last known place or place last seen, you are able to get a direction of travel to direct that search. I've got a pretty good example of one. We had a lost hunter. He had separated from his hunting partner, and we were basically just doing what they call reflex tasking. We're checking high points, we're checking avenues, trails and so forth. And come to find out, his hunting partner was able to place him. The last place he saw him was on the side of this hill, and literally pointed out to some of our searchers where that was. And so they called myself and a couple other folks up to that point, and I could clearly see where the guy had slid down the hill. He was probably sitting down looking at animals across on this other ridge, and you could see where he slid down, and we found footprint evidence of him crossing a stream. And then lo and behold, we get across a stream, we find his backpack there, and we have some footprints that go up this ridge. And we're reporting this, of course, to our search manager. He's plotting it on a map. he's got a team that's up on this ridge. Ironically, this hunter had started a fire to warm himself, and there's a fire burning on top of this ridge that the Forest Service is putting out. But the members up on the ridge could see footprints leading out of that burned area towards another ridge, and lo and behold, that's where we found him. But it gave us that perfect direction of travel. Where's this guy going?
And was he just turned around?
I'm not sure. We know that he used the ridges to get cell service, but yet he never called anyone because we were obviously still looking for him. So he never called anyone. I don't know if he had an injury or some kind of something going on mentally, but obviously I think he was a little upset when his fire got out of control up on the ridge. But as far as what his thought process is, we never found out. But he was found alive and well.
So I guess with your training as a professional tracker through Joel Harden, I assume.
Yeah.
You're also big into the lost person behavior side of it as well.
Yeah, our unit, especially for SAR managers, as well as all of our membership, get some level of training in lost person behavior. Most of us have attended the 2-day, I believe it's 2-day course on lost person behavior. And from there, many of us have attended kind of the second part of the training, which is managing the inland search, which is where they just take that lost person behavior and apply it to different search situations, as well as more advanced planning.
Give us an idea of what the geography and the environment is like in Idaho around where IMSARU is most active.
Okay. Well, Boise's the city of Boise is in a valley. The Boise River runs through it. South of us is a lot of desert, high desert, averaging 26 to 3,000 feet. Go further south, it gets higher, like in the Owyhee mountains area. North of us is just continuous mountains. Starting with the Boise fronts, about 5 to 5,500 feet, going up further north to the Sawtooths and some of the other mountains in Idaho. They get, the Sawtooths get close to 12,000 feet. And so it goes from a lot of desert in the south to mountainous in the north of Boise.
Where do you begin as a search manager? What are you thinking about, and how do you organize all your people and your different assets?
So we're going to gather as much information as we can about our missing subject. Our leadership has built a whole, and it's all based on the lost person behavior information and data, a series of questions that we can ask not only the family of a missing person, but friends, witnesses, and so forth. So we'll want to gather as much information as we can about the subject. Then we're going to find out what resources we have that day, because we're all volunteer. We've had searches where we've got 8 to 10 people show up, and we've had searches we've had 30 people show up to help. So obviously organizing them, and we're always going to focus on what they call the reflex tasks of a search. That's the first things we're going to attack on a search, and those would be like doing a very thorough search of what they call the hub. You're going to do a really detailed search of that place, last seen or last known place that the subject was. We've had searches where we didn't do such a great job, and we luckily found them within 50 to 150 yards of where they were last seen. And then we'll focus on travel routes, trails, roads, what have you. then there's other reflex tasks such as visual or things that in the area that would attract your attention, like high points, cell towers, just places that you might be attracted to go to if you're out wandering. So we will knock out all, and the other is containment. We've actually had searches before where we were lucky to get a containment established, and we found our subject before he could leave our search area. He just happened to drive. He got back to where he had parked, and we literally catch him there where he's parked. So that would be the containment aspect of it.
How do you, as a search manager, decide which resources to deploy? Because I think I saw on your website that you have, you have dirt bike teams, canine teams. I think there was a photo with drones, trackers. So do you deploy? Do you bring everything and have all these different resources and units ready, or how does that work as a search manager?
Yeah, if they're available, you're going to find a role for them. But I guess you want to be careful about where you implement them in the search overall, because if you put a bunch of field teams out and you're going to put a live fire canine team out, you're not going to put all those people out there in the area that the live fire canine is going to go, because that dog's going to be smelling everybody. It's different from a cadaver or human remains detection dog where they're just looking for that specific odor. But you definitely want to coordinate it based on the information that you have available, what's going to go where, when. Like a lot of times, if we have tracks or if we have a vehicle to start from, the tracking team often will go to that vehicle and work it before it gets contaminated by a bunch of people. If we get a direction of travel from that vehicle, say we've got footprints leaving the vehicle and they're going up a particular trail, there's nothing that says we shouldn't or couldn't put other search assets up there, such as take one of these mountain bike teams to run up that trail real fast to see if they can locate the person hiking, or a live fine canine, or whatever seems appropriate for that search. But if you were to flood that vehicle area with a bunch of canines or ground teams, it's probably going to contaminate anything that we were trying to find there. So that's our hope, at least.
Yeah. Do the mountain bike teams allow you to perform a hasty search? Is that what they're there for? To just
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and they've done some good searching. They've done some great rescues, our mountain bike team, because a rescue, basically, you have a subject that's injured or in some kind of predicament, and you have more or less a known location. So you're sending people to that location instead of searching for them. And having the mountain bike team, we can get them there rapidly. They can take more gear to address whatever the medical issue is. And also on the search function, they're able to, if they're simply searching, they can cover areas such as trails and roads quicker than a ground team can.
What I want to get into next is just some of the searches that you have performed in your various roles. And I think the first one that we have is the one where you were still working with law enforcement, and was that in Shingle Creek in 2019?
Dry Creek, Shingle Creek. So that system is basically a 20-mile loop. They start out on the Dry Creek Trail, and this is in the Boise foothills or the Boise front. The trailhead is off of what's called Bogus Basin Road, And Bogus Basin is a popular ski resort 16 miles north of Boise. So there's tons of traffic going up there, especially this time of year. And there's a lot of trail systems off of Bogus Basin Road, including the Dry Creek Trail. So the Dry Creek Trail starts out and you can go one direction and it'll continue all the way to all the way around and then become Shingle Creek, and then it returns to Dry Creek. So if you see that on the map there, you see the where it splits the trail. So the right fork is Shingle Creek and the left fork is still Dry Creek. So at some point it transitions from Shingle back to Dry Creek.
So what was your role in this search? This was in 2019. Were you the search coordinator, the search manager?
I was the incident commander. So
Incident commander.
I was part of Idaho Mountain Search and Rescue at the time, but this call came in to the sheriff's office as a missing person. So the call originated with Boise police because he was missing from his home. And after doing a little bit of investigation, they found his vehicle parked at the lower parking area for the Dry Creek Trail. After talking to mother and family members, they determined he had left Saturday. Subject's name is Kyle. He was approximately 27 years old. He had left to go hiking that Saturday, and it would have been Saturday, February 9th, 2019. And he was supposed to go hiking with a friend, but it was raining in Boise and snowing in the mountains there. And his friend was like, "Are you crazy? I'm not going out in this." And so he said, "Well, I'm still going to go. I'm hoping to get the whole loop done today." And so the last word were from text messages from him and his friend. And so come Sunday, he was supposed to meet his mother for lunch. He didn't show up. And come Monday, his mother reported him missing. And we found his vehicle. Actually, his family found his vehicle parked at the lower trailhead. So we knew he had to have gone up onto the Dry Creek trail system. I was helping my crash reconstructionist that day, try to locate video. We had a quadruple fatal car accident over the weekend. So I'd gone out to this nursery in Western Ada County where this took place. I wanted to see if this nursery had any video of the crash. And that's when my lieutenant called me and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm trying to get video for the crash." And he's like, "Well, you might want to gather some things up, but because we've got a missing person and I want you to lead the search effort for it." And he gave me some information about it. And he said, the sheriff gives permission to call out Idaho Mountain Search and Rescue. So we did that. And that's where it all began.
If there's a missing person, the family first contacts the sheriff's office, reports them missing, it tells them their whereabouts, their activities, where they were hiking, and then the sheriff's office would call you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
It actually, so how we get activated is through state comm or state communications, which is a statewide dispatching system. And so we'll get our pager will go off, whoever the SAR manager is for that day, and he'll get a notification to contact state comms. They'll call state comm. State comm will say, "Hey, Ada County is requesting your assistance on a search," and then you'll contact whoever the contact is for the search.
Does IMSARU also assist law enforcement with other types of searches, evidence recovery, forensic searches, that type of thing?
We have not as much as we'd like to, but we have done some evidence type searches. A few years ago, we had a homicide of a female. She was a Boise State student, and Boise police asked us to come search a corridor out in basically in the desert in the south of I-84 freeway, looking for evidence that the suspect may have dropped, because they had phone information that he was out in that area, and they suspected he may have dumped some of her belongings out there.
The search you did in Elko, Nevada, tell us about that.
So it was actually Elko County, which is a huge county. So this was about 50 miles south of Wells, Nevada, off of Highway 93. The Elko County Sheriff's Office, who we'd worked with in the past, had been looking for a young man who went missing from his vehicle. He literally was parked on the side of the road in the middle of the county. No real towns or cities even nearby. Car was parked, the door was open. Most of his belongings were still in the car. Some he had stashed behind some sagebrush, as if he was trying to decide whether he was taking these things or not, or whatever. I don't know what was his thought process, but they had some good tracks, so this was a great tracking mission of the young man leaving his vehicle, heading west out into the desert, and they'd been on it for a few days and then called us to help. So we gathered as many of our trackers as we could, and as well as canine teams and ground search teams and remote pilot, aka drone teams. We used pretty much all of them on this, and we went out there at least 4 or 5 times. Not all of them were tracking missions, because this occurred over the course of months, just trying to find evidence of this young man. But our first couple of trips out there, we tracked probably 10 between us and the Elko County folks. We probably tracked 10 to 20 miles of his footprints, and then we got to a point where his footprints literally got covered by snow. So he'd been out there, and then typical Nevada desert weather. It's sunny one day, and the next day it snows. So it would have snowed right over the top of his tracks. And we tried a bunch of different techniques to try to pick up the tracks again. We never could. But they'd been out there since then with canines and still haven't found a trace of this young man. And this was in May, I want to say, of 2022 when it started.
This young man got turned around. He got lost.
He had some mental health issues, and we're not sure what his intent was, but to me, it looked like he was paranoid. Why would you flee your vehicle in the middle of the desert? So maybe he thought somebody was following him. Who knows what it was? But he was generally traveling in a straight direction, as if he had some kind of destination he was trying to get to. But what that was, I have no idea. I was just going to say the tracking was interesting there, because the area has a lot of wild horses. And of course, wild horses are not shoed. And so a lot of times when the horse would step and then make a footprint and then step again with another foot and make another footprint, and they would kind of be 2 horse feet together, it almost looks like a human footprint. And we got tricked up a couple of times with that, but we sorted it out pretty quickly and figured out what were horse and what were not horse.
You had mentioned your drone teams in that specific instance. What is IMSARU's drone capacity? What kind of drone teams do you have, and what kind of I guess drone technology do you use?
I know that we started with the Mavic drones, and I couldn't tell you specifically, but I know that they just bought a second one, and they're really capable drones. They're the one that we were using last year that I assume we're probably buying a similar model for the second one has the ability to put thermal imaging on it. You can put a speaker on it. And we had a search 2 years ago where we had a missing skier and they ended up on the back side of Bogus Basin Ski Resort in this area that we always seem to find people that ski out of bounds. They end up in this basin because you really can't get out of it on downhill skis. And so they flew the drone up there. They located the subject. Subject saw the drone, was waving at it using thermal imaging, came back, put a speaker on the drone, flew it back and say, "Don't move, stay where you are. We're sending a team down to you." And sure enough, they send a team right down to them using that technology.
You know, you put a speaker on the drone, you tell them to stay there, and then obviously you send resources in, whatever that may be, vehicles or people to recover them. But you do training with the National Guard as well.
Yeah, we try to train with them at least yearly. Do air operations as far as, you know, just safety around helicopters, doing the lifting or the hoisting operations, how to attach a hoisting sled up to the helicopter.
Do they lift your operators into mountainous areas?
They have in the past. We haven't had one recently where we've lifted, you know, using a hoist, but we had a search 3 or 4 years ago on Mount Bora, which is Idaho's highest peak, for a missing climber there. And they were able to pick up all of our personnel from the top of the mountain there. They actually transported him to the ridge where he was last seen, and they were able to pick everybody up that way. And we actually had one where there was a canine team that was down in this creek bottom that was part of that search, and they had to literally throw the canine up into the helicopter and, you know, pull themselves up onto the skid of the Black Hawk and get in the Black Hawk, because it just couldn't put all of its skids down because there was no safe place to do it.
Right.
Which is a pretty unique experience. But yeah, we work with the Guard quite a bit. There's a central clearinghouse that you have to call into to request National Guard assets, and we always have to go through them. But a lot of times we'll give the local aviation unit here in Idaho a heads up that we're going to be requesting them, and usually by that we can find out whether they're going to be available or not, whether they've got pilots available and whether they can fly that day.
Just to finish off here, Mike, what would you say to somebody who is interested in getting into search and rescue and joining a volunteer search and rescue organization?
Come to our meetings, or depending on where you live. If you're in the Boise area, definitely come to our meetings. They're every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. They're open to the public. Get a feel for what we do. See how we operate. Just get to know our personalities. And they have, I think, 2 opportunities through the year now, because we've had a pretty large membership impulse lately. We actually had to do some interviews to get to narrow down our members. So we had so many people that applied, but they'll do an information session twice a year, and then they'll do a SAR Academy twice a year for the people that end up joining our membership and become search volunteers.
And if I'm looking to join, what sort of commitment should I expect?
Well, there's definitely a training commitment, because there's a basic level of training that you need to get to that first year. There's certain types of training and events we expect people to help with, fundraising, to help with doing public events that basically either educate people on how to stay safe in the backcountry. We'll talk about the 10 essentials, the things that you would want to take with you if you're going on a backcountry trip, basic mountain safety type things. And so they'll have to participate in at least a public event, a fundraising event, several training events. They have to be at a certain proficiency. They have to do what's called a 24-hour pack check. We will provide a list of the things that they need in their 24-hour pack. And before they can be field certified, they have to pass that. And because basically, you never know when you're going to go on a search where you're going to end up spending 8 hours, 10 hours, 24 hours. So you have to have everything that you need for those 24 hours with you.
That sounds like a great opportunity and valuable training. And I guess after some time in the organization, there's the special, you have the opportunity to join some of the more specialized teams within your organization.
Yeah, correct. The new folks, we definitely want them to get all the basic requirements done and to understand how we do searches and search techniques and all that. But they will have the opportunity to join one of our specialty teams, and we've got a technical rescue team, and they're certified through the Mountain Rescue Association on everything they do. We've got canine teams, both live search, HRD, trailing and tracking canines, and they have various national level organizations that certify them. If they want to be a tracker, they're required to attend our training and eventually go to one of the JHPTS classes. The only way to get certified as a basic tracker is to have a certain level of proficiency and get tested at one of the JHPTS classes that they attend. Our drone team, or they call the remote pilot team, they all have Part 109s, and they have to go through all the regular public testing that's available for operating drones. They have to know all the federal FAA regulations and so forth. And then we have a mountain bike team, and they have team standards within their team. There's no national organization, but they have to be at a certain level of ability and have the right equipment and so forth. And I think that's all our special. Oh no, we have what's called an OHV team, which is off-road vehicles. So we're talking UTVs, ATVs, Jeeps, anything that has the capability to go off-road, and they train on a regular basis as well.
Wow. I mean, that just sounds like such a great opportunity for anybody looking to get into search and rescue. And thank you so much for explaining what IMSARU has to offer and how to get in. I'm sure there's a lot of listeners and viewers in the Boise area that might be interested in joining. So if you are, reach out to IMSARU, IMSARU.org, IMSARU.org. If you're not in the Boise area, as Mike mentioned, reach out to your volunteer SAR, search and rescue organization in your area if you're interested in going that route. But as Mike mentioned, there's a lot of takes a lot of dedication and commitment to join these groups. They're absolute professionals. I've had the pleasure of working with SAR operators, and I look forward to it each and every time. Before we finish off here, Mike, any final words on search and rescue or surviving in the wilderness, or to our viewers and listeners?
Just the best thing I could tell anyone that's gonna, at least if they're gonna go out in the backcountry or go on these trips where you're likely not to have cell service or phone service, is to leave a plan behind where you're going, when you expect to be back, a time for, okay, give me a couple hours of leeway, but if I'm not back by this time, please call dispatch and get a search started for me. When I was doing the Marine Patrol, we would tell boaters to do the same thing, because we'd have boaters that would be missing, and it's on a self-contained lake, but still they haven't come home yet, and we got to know if they've capsized or they're just having too much fun and over on a far shore that they haven't come back yet.
Perfect. And those are better words than I could ever end off with. So we will end there, and thank you, Mike, so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I look forward to future chats, maybe even getting to work together one day. Thank you, STS Nation. You can find more videos at STS Talk on YouTube. And again, thank you, Mike, and we will see you in the next show.
Thanks, Doug.